This is the USS Gerald R. Ford, the most expensive warship ever built. $13 billion of American steel, nuclear power, and electromagnetic launch systems designed to project force anywhere on the planet. And in 2022, it had a problem that no enemy missile could ever inflict. It wasn't the electromagnetic catapults or the advanced radar. It is something we all use every day. And if one system fails, it shuts down everything, including the weapons. When the announcement hits the 1MC, water hours are now in effect. The crew already knows what it means. Showers are gone. Laundry is shut down. The galley starts rationing. The Ford carries more than 4,500 sailors, and each of them just lost access to it. And the ship is surrounded by it. Billions of gallons in every direction. Can't drink a single drop because of this critical bottleneck. The carrier has 4 reverse osmosis distillation plants that run 24 hours a day, forcing seawater through semi-permeable membranes at 800 psi. Roughly 5 times the pressure inside a fire hose. Salt, minerals, biologics, stripped out molecule by molecule. The output? 400,000 gallons of fresh water every single day. Enough to fill a backyard swimming pool roughly every 90 minutes. You probably assume showers are the biggest drain. They're not. On older Nimitz-class carriers, every catapult launch consumes steam generated from fresh water. The shower and a Super Hornet drinking from the same well. The Ford eliminated that with electromagnetic launch systems. But the water budget didn't get easier, it just shifted. More electronics, more cooling demands, more freshwater feeding systems that have nothing to do with hygiene. If the plants go down entirely, the ship has roughly 2 to 3 days of reserve before mission capability starts degrading. Not combat capability, everything. Cooking, cooling, sanitation. The carrier doesn't run on nuclear power alone. It runs on water. The water works, but not everyone gets the same share. Over 50% of this carrier's internal volume belongs to machinery, fuel, munitions, and aircraft. The crew, every last one of them, is squeezed into what's left. 2,000 compartments connected by narrow passageways and steep ladders packed into the margins of a warship that was designed to fight first and house people second. You climb into your rack, 26 inches wide, barely wider than your shoulders, 20 inches of clearance above your face. If you sit up too fast, you hit your head, every single time. The mattress beneath you is 3 inches of foam on a metal pan. Your coffin locker, the storage bin under that mattress, holds everything you own for the next 6 months. Uniforms, toiletries, personal items, that's it. The person next to you is 6 inches away. The person above you is so close you can hear them breathe. And there are between 40 and 100 people in this compartment, depending on whether you're on a Ford class or an older Nimitz class. The Ford reduced berthing compartments from 180 people down to roughly 40, a deliberate design specifically to improve rest. But 40 strangers in a steel room with no windows is still 40 strangers in a steel room with no windows. Now try to sleep. The noise levels in forward berthing, near the catapults, average 81 decibels during flight operations. That's equivalent to standing next to a running garbage disposal. Aft berthing drops to 61, normal conversation level. Where your rack is assigned determines whether you sleep in relative quiet or inside a drum someone's beating with a hammer every 45 seconds. Red lights stay on around the clock so watchstanders can navigate without waking anyone. There's no darkness aboard a carrier. Not ever. Engineering crews work a rotation called 5 and dime. 5 hours on watch, 10 hours off, repeating for the entire deployment. That 10 hours includes eating, showering, maintenance, and whatever's left for sleep. For some sailors, the coffin rack isn't even available for a full night's rest. It's a 4-hour window wedged between watches, and not everyone gets their own rack. During surge manning or with transient personnel aboard, hot racking still happens. 2 sailors assigned to the same bunk on alternating shifts. Your pillow, their sweat. Welcome aboard. The Navy calculated the absolute minimum space a person can sleep in and still function, then built exactly that, not a square inch more. And this is the standard for the vast majority of the crew. The galley on an aircraft carrier never closes. Not for holidays, not for combat operations, not for anything. 4 meal periods run around the clock: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and mid-rats. The midnight rations serve between 2300 and 0100 for the thousands of sailors pulling night shifts. That's 4 kitchens running simultaneously, and the number of people staffing them will make you wonder how any of it works. On the Ford, 114 culinary specialists produce over 17,000 meals per day across 7 separate galleys. That's roughly 150 meals per cook per day, with no sick days and no calling in a replacement from a temp agency. Each meal cycle burns through about 1,500 pounds of chicken, 500 pounds of potatoes, and 300 gallons of milk. And that's just 1 meal out of 4. The galley itself runs hot. Grease hangs in the air. Industrial ovens push the ambient temperature well above 100 degrees in a steel compartment with no windows and limited ventilation, which is why more cooks get carried out of the galley from heat than almost any other injury on the ship. And every pound of raw material those cooks burn through has to reach them first, hauled up from 8 decks below. The freezers sit deep in the hull, and everything gets hauled up by hand or by elevator through passageways so narrow that 2 people carrying a case of frozen chicken can barely pass. When the ship runs low, it doesn't pull into port. It conducts a vertical replenishment, a vert-rep, where a supply ship pulls alongside and stages dozens of pallets while MH-60 Seahawk helicopters make trip after trip for hours on end. The carrier stays exposed to potential enemy fire the entire time. Flight deck crews working the pallets in the open while helicopters kick rotor wash across the deck. It's not glamorous, but without it, the ship comes home. And coming home early is not an option when you're the only carrier in the strike group. All that effort, all that risk. Helicopters making trips for hours just to keep the food flowing. And after all of it, the Navy wants you to believe the galley is the great equalizer. An admiral stands in the same chow line as a 19-year-old seaman. Same food, same 80-gallon pots, rank doesn't matter. Except that's not quite true. The food comes from the same kitchen, but chiefs, E7 and above, eat in their own separate mess with actual plates, real silverware, a salad bar, and custom grill options. Junior officers sit in the wardroom with cloth napkins and sit-down service. That same chicken an E3 scoops onto a metal tray gets plated on ceramic for an O3 2 compartments away. Same galley, same cooks, completely different experience based entirely on the rank on your collar. And the cost difference is almost insulting. The Navy spends about $8 to $10 per sailor per day on food, while a cruise ship passenger gets $50 to $80 in food costs daily. The carrier feeds 5,000 people for what a mid-range hotel spends on continental breakfast. Food, the Navy can at least produce on demand. Fresh water is harder because the ship itself drinks first. Every drop of fresh water on an aircraft carrier is manufactured on board. The ship floats in the middle of an ocean it cannot drink, surrounded by billions of gallons that would corrode every system aboard if they touched them. Desalination plants aboard a Ford-class carrier convert seawater into approximately 400,000 gallons of potable water every 24 hours. 4 separate plants, each rated for 100,000 gallons a day. Sounds like plenty for 4,500 people. It isn't. The ship's own systems drink first. Cooling loads for electronics and weapons, galley operations, medical, and 1,000 auxiliary demands that have nothing to do with the crew's comfort. Whatever's left after that goes to drinking and cooking, then laundry, and then, only then, personal hygiene. Imagine you're an E3 on your first deployment. The average American at home uses 80 to 100 gallons of water per day, and your share of what's left aboard the carrier has to cover your portion of 17,000 daily meals, your laundry, and whatever remains for showers. The showers themselves have push-button activators that run for about 15 seconds per press. You hit the button, water comes out. 15 seconds later, it stops. You soap up in silence. Press again, rinse for another burst, press again. That's a Navy shower. Roughly 2 minutes total if you're efficient. Pressing that button 6 to 8 times to get through it. Now, lose one of those 4 desalination plants to maintenance, and you've just cut production by 25% overnight. Showers get restricted first. Water hours go into effect. Specific windows when personal hygiene water is available. And if you miss your window because you were on watch, you wait for the next one. And the crew's water isn't just going to showers. It's also going to the 20,000 pounds of laundry the ship generates every week. Ship laundry facilities run 16 to 20 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week, fighting for the same water the crew needs to stay clean. And here's a detail that should make you pause. The electrical loads and lint buildup from those industrial dryers make laundry facilities one of the leading causes of shipboard fires. The thing most likely to damage a $13 billion warship isn't a missile or a torpedo. It's a lint trap. Fire risk from doing laundry, 2-minute showers on rationed water, and underneath all of it, a smell that never leaves. Veterans describe it independently, the same way across decades of service. Jet fuel, salt water, industrial cleaning chemicals, and the ambient reality of thousands of people who just took 2-minute showers in shared stalls. You stop noticing after a few days aboard, but come back from shore leave and step through that hatch, and it hits you like a physical wall. Years later, a whiff of JP5 jet fuel in a civilian parking lot can put you right back on the mess decks with your eyes closed. Here's what nobody tells you before your first deployment. All of this is survivable in week 1. The Navy shower is a novelty you'll text your friends about. The rack is just a bed. The food is honestly not bad. By month 4, the accumulation starts grinding. You've eaten the same meal rotation for the 14th time, and you can predict tomorrow's menu by the day of the week. The 3-inch mattress has compressed into a permanent divot shaped exactly like you, a reminder that could be measured in nights. That 2-minute shower that felt like a funny story to tell your girlfriend on day 3 feels like a punishment on day 90. And your uniform smells clean, but never quite fresh. Industrial detergent doesn't care about fabric softener. The little things add up. The fluorescent lights that never turn off. The hum of ventilation fans that becomes the background frequency for your entire existence. The fact that you haven't seen a sunset from ground level in 4 months. And you start doing math you can't stop. 120 days of pressing the shower button 6 times. Roughly 700 meals on a metal tray. 400 watch rotations slept through catapult launches, rattling the overhead 2 decks above your face. The numbers accumulate like interest on a debt, and the weight of routine itself becomes the hardest thing about deployment. Shore leave is the only reset, and it's also the cruelest thing the Navy gives you, because it reminds you precisely what you're missing. A real shower that runs until the hot water runs out. A meal you chose from an actual menu. A room where nobody is sleeping directly above you and nobody's alarm is going off at 0200 for the next watch. 72 hours of being a person who makes choices instead of a rack number on a watch bill. Then the ship gets underway again. The hatch closes, the smell comes back, and every comfort you just rediscovered is 4,500 nautical miles behind you. None of that would matter as much if the conditions were shared equally. They aren't. Walk into a junior enlisted berthing compartment and you'll find 60 to 100 sailors stacked 3 high in what the Navy calls coffin racks. And the name is earned. 78 inches long, 30 inches wide, 27 inches of vertical clearance between your chest and the bottom rack above you, with a 3-inch mattress between you and the metal pan. The rack is your bedroom, your closet, and the only private space you'll occupy on a ship of 5,000 for 6 straight months. Everything you own fits in the coffin-sized locker built into the frame. You change clothes lying down because there's no room to sit up. The curtain, a thin fabric panel you pull across the opening, is the only barrier between you and 100 other people breathing, snoring, and shifting in the dark. That curtain is sacred. Veterans will tell you without hesitation, you never touch another person's rack curtain without permission. Ever. In a world where you share every meal, every shower, every waking hour with thousands of people, that curtain is the only thing between you and everybody else. 6 square feet of space behind a piece of fabric. And that's what privacy looks like on a carrier. But a curtain blocks what you can see. It does nothing for what you hear. If your berthing sits below the flight deck, what you hear is catapult launches, 30-ton aircraft accelerating from 0 to 170 miles per hour in 2 seconds every 45 seconds during sustained flight operations. The ship shudders with each one, the steel groans, and the roar penetrates 8 decks of metal and insulation like they weren't even there. And here's the part that gets every veteran nodding. You learn to sleep through it. The brain adapts completely. Rewiring catapult launches into white noise the same way a city kid sleeps through sirens. But when flight ops suddenly stop, when the launches cease at 2 in the morning without warning, the silence wakes you up. The absence of noise becomes more jarring than the noise ever was, because your brain has learned to treat the sound of 30-ton jets launching off the roof as a lullaby. Now walk up 4 decks and forward into Chiefs country, E7 and above. The air is slightly different up here. Quieter, less crowded. The passageways wider by a couple of feet. 20 to 30 per compartment instead of 100, with their own separate mess and amenities like the enlisted galley doesn't offer. Not luxury, but measurably, noticeably better than what's below. And everyone below knows it. Keep climbing. Officer country. Junior officers share staterooms, 2 or 3 per room, with actual beds, a desk, and a bathroom shared between adjoining rooms. 4 officers per bathroom instead of the enlisted ratio downstairs. Senior officers get private staterooms with private heads. The commanding officer, an 06 captain, occupies a suite with a bedroom, office, private bathroom, and sitting area spanning roughly 200 square feet of private space. And then there's the admiral's cabin. If a flag officer is embarked, they get what amounts to a private apartment, bedroom, office, conference room, private galley with a personal steward who prepares meals on fine china with silver place settings, and on some carriers, the only bathtub aboard the entire ship. 600 square feet, on the exact same vessel where an E3 seaman, the person actually turning wrenches, hauling ordnance, and standing watch through the night, gets 15 square feet behind a curtain. Let that math sit for a moment. A federal prison cell in the United States averages 70 to 80 square feet per inmate. A junior enlisted sailor on an aircraft carrier gets less than a tenth of that. And they volunteered for it. Same ship, same ocean, same mission. Your rank doesn't determine just your authority. It determines whether you sleep in a coffin or a bedroom, or whether you shower with 100 people or 4, and whether your meals arrive on a metal tray or fine china. The Navy's answer is simple. Every square foot goes to keeping the ship in the fight. The ship carries 75 aircraft, 3 million gallons of jet fuel, and enough ordnance for weeks of sustained operations. Your rack is taking up space that could hold bombs, jet engines, or fuel. The ship is a weapon first and a home second. And for the 4,000 enlisted sailors who make it run, home is the most generous word you could possibly use for what they've got. And the numbers show it. Retention drops quietly. Sailors finishing their first enlistment, looking at the coffin rack, remembering the 2-minute shower, doing the math on another 6-month deployment, and choosing the exit. The 4's own extended deployment in 2025 and 2026 pushed some sailors past the breaking point, with crew members openly telling reporters they plan to leave the service when the ship finally returned to port. Burnout compounds in ways the Navy can measure but struggles to fix. Because fixing it means finding square footage that doesn't exist on a ship already packed to the waterline with the machinery of war. Bye for now.